What's going on, fight fans? This is Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Rob Jarrell, and unfortunately, this isn't a video about boxing, MMA, or any other combat sport, but more so a video to honor the NBA legend who was recently killed in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California, Kobe Bean Bryant. Uh, it is a really sad day in the sports world. I was going to say basketball, but sports in general. I don't know if you know this about me, but basketball is technically my first love. I used to watch boxing with my dad. I watched football with my dad. MMA came around a lot later. I was a fan of a lot of different combat sports, and I used to get as much as I could when it was available, especially as someone with very limited resources. But basketball was always my first and my number one love in the sports world. And I can honestly say I wasn't the biggest fan of Kobe Bryant, but there's one thing about respecting his skills, his work ethic, his competitiveness, anything that he did to become one of the best players of all time. I mean, arguably, you can put him in the top 10. I think he goes without a doubt in the top 10. A lot of people can even put him in the top five, maybe even the top three. I know I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. It was almost like the second coming, crossing different eras. I mean, he came in that legendary 1996 draft with, you saw Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and then him. And you talk about three guys who play shooting guard or small forward, like Paul Pierce coming in that particular draft where maybe anywhere from 5 to 8 are probably going to the Hall of Fame. Um, Kobe is he was pretty much the peak of what a player drafted right out of high school could be with him, LeBron, and Moses Malone. And you really can't see anyone else in the league like him. And granted, I mean, there are plenty of great guards in the league. You're talking about James Harden, Russell Westbrook, who have that killer mentality. But, I mean, it's just a guy who can do it on both ends of the court and be a leader and be a champion. Kobe Bryant was a five-time champion, beating some great teams. I know he beat Philadelphia. I know he beat Boston. I know he beat Orlando. You just a two-time Finals MVP, one-time NBA MVP who could have gotten more, 18-time All-Star, like a 15-time All-NBA player, first, second, and third team, uh, like a 10-time or 11-time All-Defensive player, two-time Olympic champion, and a guy who was able to play 20 seasons and eventually became the number three player on all-time scoring lists at 33,000, just over 33,000, almost 34,000 points behind Karl Malone and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Recently, LeBron eclipsed that mark of Kobe Bryant and moved third on the list, but it's it's just really jarring. And not only in that crash that we lost the NBA legend, but we also found out that his daughter Gianna, who had would have seemed like to be a very promising basketball life ahead of her, as she coached his team. He spoke highly of her. She got all his mannerisms. If you ever watched the video from Play of the two of them together, and he really loved his daughter. Not only that, but other individuals on the helicopter. I mean, not only the pilot died, but of 9 people, it was a classmate and a teammate of his daughter's on the plane, her parents. I think two of them were coaches, a girls basketball coach and a community college baseball coach who was actually very, very well known in developing players in California. So it's just a really tragic turn of events to lose a player. And a lot of people have really felt it because, one, we watched him from the time he was 17 or 18 in the NBA with the Los Angeles Lakers, staying 20 years, staying 20 seasons. I mean, when he came in the league in 96, I was 12. He's only 6 years older than me. And I got to see the transitions from Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant, from one of the greatest to another great, playing with other greats, and before it transitioned to LeBron James, who is the new great of this particular era. I mean, he's had battles with Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, Allen Iverson, Chris Webber. I mean, Reggie Miller, and Reggie Miller is one of the few that could say he took on both those guys and Allen Iverson. And and I think it's hitting people hard, especially hard for someone who grew up watching basketball in the sports world, just because not only was he just young at 41, but it was so sudden, so jarring, and almost like just random, something to be something that just was totally unexpected because it wasn't like he was sick. He was healthy, coaching, had started his second career outside of basketball as a venture capitalist, having his own, I think, his production company. Has an Oscar for Dear Basketball Short. I mean, how many guys can say they moved on from a successful, one of the best sports career that you can ever see, and move into something else and almost have immediate success? And that was just really starting out. It's just really hard, and I mean, we remember him for those championships, scoring 81 points, 60 points on several occasions. I think it was in like 2004, 2005. He averaged like 55 points for a week, and then, you know, just a relentless work ethic, competitiveness. I mean, he came up with the Mamba mentality, and that's something that we should all, in any sports or any part of our life, whether it's business, sports, art. I mean, just having that drive to be great, to be greater. As his commercial with the Kobe system is like, I'm already the greatest. Be greater. That was the mentality that he presented for himself and required of others. And him being a legend, let's not act like he didn't have his on and off court controversies, but to be honest, that kind of pales in comparison to what's going on. And a lot of people are going to say stuff, and I'm gonna be honest, I have seen some of the most either disgusting, downplayed, or just inappropriate comments made about the man, where these people have no decorum. I mean, his body is literally still warm, and this is what they do. And you'll see it a lot. People like, oh, he's this and he did that, and let's not act like we lost. No, this wasn't a dude who is just a lot. But we know he's had his form of controversies. I mean, get into with spats with Shaq, for that, watching that team break up, and his coach, who left after 3 championships, and Phil Jackson then came back and was able to win 2 more with him, which means, I mean, they just rose beyond whatever differences they had, to taking on other greats, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, guys who he battled time and time again, but he really had and garnered the utmost respect to and from. And it's just really tragic to see one of the greats leave the world in the manner in which he left. I mean, he wasn't even the guy that had a whole lot of other controversies. Just, if you just didn't measure up to his standard of at least wanting to win and working to win. I mean, it's some guys that just didn't make it playing under him. I mean, Dwight Howard and Kwame Brown, and I mean, he had Smush Parker there. So it's just a tragic thing to see. And if you have time, pray for the family, pray for the families, not just the Bryants, but all those else who actually died in that helicopter crash. Pray for those families, pray for yourselves, hug your loved ones, and make sure that, you know, you're getting the most out of your life and with your loved ones, and the time that you need to move on and be happy and appreciate and love and cherish all the time that you have. And I would say this, and a lot of people, and I have to say this, a lot of people is like, what about other people? These people don't die. These people don't die. Well, you should always cherish that. And it's as someone who lost their father in the last few years, I mean, I always wish I had time, and I always say, cherish those people, cherish those, hold on, spend as much time with them as you can. That's all I have for you today. If you're watching this, if you made it to the end, I will be doing a recap of this past weekend's fights that featured Danny Garcia taking on Ivan Rekhatch and Jared Hurd returning against Francisco Santana. And until next time, fight on.